Hello, you're watching the news from Kazakhstan. I am Max Bagashev, and these are the top stories. Men accused of murdering the daughter of oilfield worker actively engaged in public activities are sentenced to 16 and 18 years respectively. Over 200 construction workers went on strike in Atyrau demanding the salary rise. And Kazakhstan journalist community actively discussing the replacement of the Vremya newspaper chief editor. The former head of Lita newspaper Lev Terakov will succeed Marat Asipov on his post. First testimonies of witnesses in the notorious policeman case were heard by the court on Thursday. Law enforcement officers revealed that they were given service weapons 10 days prior to unrest. At the same time, attorneys on the case say that most bullets removed from the bodies of victims were either lost or damaged on purpose to prevent a successful ballistic evaluation. All speakers during yesterday's hearing said policemen opened fire at the crowd in Zhanaozen without giving any warning.
Before lunch, the court hearing, the police case was presented with the evidence by the mother of one of the victims, Rahat Kasherov. The 16-year-old boy was killed on the Independence Day at Zhanaozen Square. The bullet that literally split his jaw caught him in the car. I still can't forget his last words. "Mama, I don't want to die." Altyn Kasherova told the court that the hospital was running short of supplies on that day. She decided to fetch the needed medicines from a pharmacy and was beaten up by the policeman outside. The doctors refused to give her the bullet extracted from her son's body. Due to your persistence, you found the name of the one who shot your son. To have the ballistic test completed, Altyn had to go to Zhanaozen City Department of Internal Affairs several times. As she states, she was consistently beaten up there, but she insisted on performing the ballistics. I wanted to see Zholdubayev's face. What kind of a person is he? He never asked for forgiveness. How can someone kill people just because he was given orders? And it wasn't my son only, many people were killed there. Today's testimony from Ayzhan Duysimbayeva was shocking as well. Police officers stood on one knee and shot targeted, the woman said. She was wounded in her hip on December 16. A young man who tried to help her also got shot. Now Ayzhan has 18 screws in her leg. She has become disabled. Today in the police case, the law enforcement officers started to give testimony as witnesses. Policeman Murat Agizbayev stated that he took a machine gun on that day without registering it first and then went into the square after receiving a radio message that the ammunition ran out. Another policeman who was on duty in the city department that day stated that he saw about 150 policemen heading towards the square. Those who gave detailed descriptions of their colleagues' attire could not remember if they had any guns on them. During the questioning, the police officers couldn't provide the names of those who had issued shooting orders. The juvenile department had only stated that as early as 10 days before the events they had been issued service weapons. Most of the victims still know nothing about the origin of the extracted bullets that have been confiscated. In the hospital, a police officer came up to me. He took the bullet from the room, signed a paper and sealed it. I have not seen the ballistic results and I don't remember the name of the officer who took the bullet, although I did ask for his name at the time. Agizbayev is one of those victims who managed to hold on the extracted bullet. Today he asked the judge to admit it as evidence, but his request was denied. Lawyer Abzal Kuspanov, participating in the hearing since yesterday, believes that the victims have all the rights to doubt the fairness of the hearing. You see, they are telling me that they had not given the bullets to the police, that the police cannot be trusted. Indeed, many bullets were confiscated by the local policemen and most of them have disappeared or altered so that they cannot be matched in the tests. These are the facts. Today the court has finished hearing the victims and started questioning witnesses. Lawyer Kuspanov has asked the victims to stay in court to the end.
There is no evidence to the allegations of defendants being subjected to torture during pre-trial investigation, said on Thursday a representative of the Regional Prosecution Office speaking about the trial of 37 oil workers. Previously, the majority of defendants charged with taking part in Zhanaozen disorders claimed their testimonies were obtained through torture. Case witnesses also made similar allegations. The reason I'm here today is the man named Amanda Sakhanov who visits our house and intimidates my son. He's the chief of Ozan police. He gave me the summons and I refused to come, yet he still bothers me. Later when I visited him, he told me that he wants to talk to my son and I need to bring him over. He reminded me the next day as well. He ordered the district police officers to watch my house every day. He detains my children, checks their IDs. I wanted to tell the court about this, as I'm afraid that my son will be left with no protection when court proceedings come to an end. To recap, at one of the previous hearings, Yerlan Jailbayev and Alexander Bazhenko, the witnesses of plaintiff's party, admitted that they anonymously testified under pressure. Mother of Yerlan, frightened by surveillance, has demanded to stop putting pressure on her son, but she was unable to fully convey her message to the court as she became agitated. On Thursday, the court began analyzing the case material during the hearing at the suggestion of Batiyev's attorney. Footage made on the scene is recorded on 18 CDs. Not all of them were shown to the court. In addition to the police footage and videos taken by the Stan.kz cameraman were also shown to the court. The amateur footage from the internet, including the video of shooting people, uploaded by the user Saule540 was shown as well. The trials of Zhanaozen events could end up being a protracted affair, said on Thursday Serik Bolson Abdildin. The respected politician believes the general public now sees numerous inconsistencies in the investigation of the tragedy, as well as in testimonies and confessions of the participants. The communist believes that the authorities are having certain difficulties in writing a scenario which aims to deflect the blame from them and to avoid any responsibility. He insists on prosecuting the leadership who have intentionally ignored the demands of oil industry workers and who ordered to open fire at civilians on December 16, 2011. I think that authorities are unable to manage everything in this situation and the process is likely to be protracted, especially now when the international community is aware of it. The authorities are having difficulties regarding the scenario which they usually create in such outrageous cases. Aktau Regional Court has announced a guilty verdict to two men accused of raping and murdering Jansaule Karabalayeva, the daughter of oilfield worker Kudaybergen Karabalayev, an active participant of the 7-month-long strike in Zhanaozen.
A guilty verdict for the murder of the 18-year-old Jansaule Karabalayeva was announced behind the closed doors. Two suspects, both Zhanaozen natives, Bekniaz Abishev and Bakhidjan Zhakenov, were found guilty and were sentenced to 18 and 16 years in a maximum security prison, respectively. The convicts' families disagree with such verdict. Bakhidjan Zhakenov's mother believes her son is innocent, as the evidence was inconclusive. Even bloodstains and fingerprints found on the clothing did not match those of her son, Miramgul says. The woman has her own version of the murder. I want to say that my son is not guilty. There is evidence to prove his innocence. They do not even have anything to link my son to this crime. People say that someone called the girl's father several times and threatened him. The evidence is there, but they do not recognize it. They just wanted to put a person in prison and did it. I do not know if there is justice at all. God knows who killed his daughter. I won't be even surprised if this is the work of police officers themselves. Convicts' families are now planning to appeal the verdict, while the victim's party, Karabalayev family, is satisfied with the decision, at least according to attorney Ayjamal Nisanova. Abishev was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment for multiple offenses, rape and murder, while Zhakenov for 16 years for multiple offenses as well. We are pleased with the decision. In August last year, Jansaule parents notified Zhanaozen City Police Department about the disappearance of their daughter. The 18-year-old's father, Kudaybergen Karabalayev, was an active participant of the Zhanaozen strike. His daughter's body was found on Zhanaozen outskirts 4 days later. The girl was raped and her skull fractured. The striking Zhanaozen oil workers were convinced that the murder is linked to their actions, and specifically her father, Kudaybergen Karabalayev, who was elected as the representative of Ozenmunaygas trade union striking employees in early July 2011. Despite of the tragedy, the father of the killed girl did not draw hasty conclusions, saying that he didn't know who committed the crime and waiting for the investigation results. Ozenmunaygas trade union activist Jaksilik Turbayev was murdered 3 weeks prior. On August 2nd, his body was found at Munay Filter Service Enterprise. Striking oil workers said that the previous day Turbayev demanded to re-elect the trade union chairman, which according to the oil workers followed the employee policy. One of the suspects in Turbayev murder case was arrested in November 2011, but the date for the trial has not been set yet. Agia Kuandykova, the grandmother of convicted Bakhidjan Jakenov, says she came to the courtroom today hoping to returning home with her grandson. Agia is shocked by the verdict and is confident that her grandson didn't commit such an atrocious crime. In her opinion, the police officers did everything to cover up their tracks. Where is the justice? Why they arrested an innocent man and condemned him? They should find the guilty, but they don't. Policemen killed this girl. The families of the convicts will appeal the verdict in 10 days and are ready to reach as high as the Supreme Court.
Employees of the construction company Eurasia Stroy Capital 2007, a contractor of the Chinese Sinopec Engineering, went on strike in Atyrau. Over 200 people refused to return to their workplaces, demanding to raise salaries and improve working conditions.
Most workers here are repatriates from China. The construction site recruited specifically those who understand Chinese from all over Kazakhstan. Builders argue that the company has failed to contribute to their pension funds for an entire year. Allegedly, it devised various tricks to withhold exorbitant fines from their salaries. Conditions for the Chinese and Kazakh workers are different here. The Chinese travel to work in good buses, work under good conditions and earn several times more than we do. We manage with 50 people inside a 23-seat bus and work more than the Chinese, but we get paid peanuts. The Chinese earn 10 times more than us, Kazakhs. We get charged for uniforms, foods, etc. Look, I got this injury at work when fitting fell on my hand. I needed a surgery, but management refused to pay for the treatment. The money for surgery was raised by my co-workers. We are called scum and lion's share is withheld from our salaries. Eurasia Stroy Capital 2007 has been building a new complex for Atyrau's petroleum refinery for the production of aromatic hydrocarbons for over a year now. Now it shifts, but on an ongoing basis. The industrial construction is carried out in complicated and harmful conditions. Workers claim that the company is not paying a premium for the environment, although it is confirmed that Kazmunaygas transfers the money to the company's account. At the same time, management states that it will satisfy only legally accepted demands of the workers. If workers are on strike, who will pay for the damages to the company? All legally accepted terms will be met by the company. On Thursday, prosecutors talked with the strikers, asking them to return to work. However, workers insist on the fulfillment of their demands and now intend to appeal to the ruling party Nuratan as well as the local administration.
Samruk-Kazyna Social Partnership Fund proposes to penalize managers of major industrial enterprises for the incitement of social hatred. The fund itself was set up after Zhenozem disorders, which followed a 7-month-long strike of oil field workers. We often take no notice of the managers' mistakes when they hide behind the workers' protests. I think that in similar situations, when the management has to cut back on production and lay off some workers for external reasons, and when they initiate a conflict, I believe they must be held accountable for promoting social strife. Social conflicts have their own price, and its price is much higher than that needed to satisfy the demands of the workers on strike. Yerenbetov believes that whenever a tender is lost, certain business entities always turn the issue into a political one, thus making their employees hostages of their relations with others. Yerenbetov is certain that by involving employees in those disputes, managers promote social hatred. The foundation he's in charge of promotes setting up task group in order to prevent and resolve labor conflicts. Moreover, the foundation is now working towards creating the Institute of Negotiators in every region. It was stated at the conference on preventing labor dispute that all social expenses in the company totally depend on senior staff and higher managers who solely decide where to allocate those funds. The pressure and interests of local authorities are also taken into account. Representatives of the Samruk-Kazyna Foundation are certain that top managers need to be made accountable as well. Senior managers need to be made personally liable for preventing and resolving social and labor conflicts among the employees of the Foundation's organizations. It's senior managers who are responsible morally and legally for the lives and well-being of people under them. We cannot let things slide. We must meet with employees on a daily basis and communicate with the public opinion makers. Kazakhstan businessmen claim they are closing down gas stations across the country. During a meeting with MPs and officials, they explained their actions by the lack of state regulation for the wholesale suppliers, as well as strict control over retailers.
Gasoline tycoons are on the verge of bankruptcy again as the confrontation of gas stations owners and wholesalers is not subsiding. Retailers are complaining that they have to abide by the state-imposed rules. As a result, the payroll and taxes are eating into their profit margin and enterprises are sustaining losses. All costs are paid by individual retailers. If the current price is about 75 cents per liter, they have to buy for 73. So it is practically impossible to exist and to work making money with the 2-cent difference. The MPs were nodding empathetic during the meeting with entrepreneurs and immediately advised them to enter talks with wholesalers. At the same time, the parliamentarians admitted that the state has not been fully performing its role as the economy's regulator. What the government said in relation to why it regulates the final seller but does not regulate the entire logical chain that should be there was not entirely convincing. So I believe the government should regulate the situation somehow. This would be logical. All participants have their own profit margins at each stage. In any case, the MPs have failed to influence either party. As early as April, they asked the Regulation of Natural Monopolies Agency's chair why the prices for all fuel started to rise before the planting season. At that time, Marat Uspanov explained the situation with Kazakhstan's dependency on Russian imports and forewarned that it would be impossible to hold prices fixed either. More than 35% of fuel is imported for the most part from Russia, but if we try to hold the prices fixed, it will lead to, and we already have been through this, a deficit and more social tension. The Fuel Association representatives noted that the current situation does not aid industry development. According to the entrepreneurs, the crisis is worsening and gas stations are being closed. There were no specific examples mentioned at the table, however, businessmen were quite convincing.
Newspaper Vremya underwent unexpected leadership change. On Thursday, Marat Asipov, the former chief editor of the publication, introduced their staff to his replacement Lev Tarakov, who previously worked as a chief editor of newspaper Lita, a part of the state-owned Nur Media holding.
Staff changes are underway in newspaper Vremya as Marat Asipov, the chief editor of the leading Kazakhstan publication, is stepping down from his position. Lev Tarakov, who previously worked as the chief editor of the newspaper Liter, will replace Asipov. The official meeting of the new chief editor with the staff took place on Thursday morning. I have nothing more to add. The staff took the change okay, and in turn I wanted and did reassure people, making sure they don't do anything rushed. This is just work. Nevertheless, the resignation news surprised the reporters of the popular publication. Lev Tarakov's introduction took place right before the next issue was signed into print, so the change of the chief editor had not affected the release. When asked whether reporters will follow their former leader, said it remains to be seen. Well, it is early to make conclusions because this introduction of the new editor just happened. In his words, the editorial policy will not change, but then he did add the word substantially. I have no assumptions, but there are some speculations on the internet which says that this was the shareholders' decision. The chief editor confirmed as much, but no one knows why they took the decision. The reason for Marat Asipov's leave was the most discussed topic for his colleagues. Journalist Vadim Bareika reacted first. He was among the founders of the publication and was its daily section chief editor just a year ago. Bareika expressed his opinion on the charges in the newspaper Golos Respubliki. Officially, it is the decision of the stakeholders. In his Kostag interview, however, Marat delicately avoids mentioning the real owners, although it is rather an open secret for the thinking part of the population. Of course, it is Kazakhmys. The authorities run out of last straws in regards to the publication. Take, for instance, Danyar Ashimbayev's interview to Zarina Akhmatova. Kazakhs did not fight for independence in the recent paper. Brilliant as usual. Quite possibly Vladimir Kim, the president of Kazakhmys, who at the same time also happened to be the public trustee of the newspaper, might have been reproached from the top for losing control over the media. A new supervisor whose name I do not know yet obviously needs a new chief editor. Vremya may change with the arrival of Lev Tarakov, says media experts. Over the past year, his own publication, being a part of the state-owned holding Nur Media, attracted attention only by regular interviews with the president's advisor Yermuhamed Yiltizbayev. At the same time, its main competitor actively covered journalism events, ran stories of the opposition's troubles and exposed senior officials. Media advocate Tamara Kaleva notes that if the style of literature will move to Vremya, the outlet will lose its unique identity. It is rather unfortunate in many respects that the best publication depends on the very officials who are the anonymous shareholders. Surely there are some money bags that are working with caution and looking back at state policies. I don't think it was their decision. The newspaper is successful with a large circulation and profit margin. Why change the editor then? Future profit margins and rating could indicate the efficiency of the new newspaper leader, but the Kazakh market is not always subject to economic laws. Regular readers will give a better answer to the question if Vremya did make a step forward or not.
In the meantime, Lev Tarakov's last newspaper, Liter, has published a new interview with the president's advisor Yermuhamed Yiltizbayev. The official has once again attacked the former BTA bank head Mukhtar Ablyazov, comparing him to Dnipropetrovsk terrorist and saying the main opponent of Nursultan Nazarbayev is capable of the most radical actions. I know Ablyazov personally since 1998. I must admit he's a very strong, smart and energetic person. In a way he reminds me Conan Doyle's Professor Moriarty. Eventually his intellect and energy were entirely driving in the negative direction. In his recent internet appeal, Ablyazov once again called for no support to occupant regime. In other words, he suggests that our country is occupied. Occupants had to be fought throughout history. Thus our law enforcement agencies should stay alert. The same goes for our fellow citizens. People have died in the recent blast in Dnipropetrovsk. Can something similar happen here as well? As long as state criminals with huge financial resources are hiding abroad, anything can happen. Independent journalist Sergei Duvanov believes Yiltizbayev himself can also be a character from a Sherlock Holmes novel. Well, then he can be compared to the Hound of Baskervilles, which upon receiving its master's command charges at the next target by means of an interview and attacks it with questions. I think this is what happened during the latest interview. The Hound caught the smell of Ablyazov's shoe and picked up the trail. The terrorism issue came up and it was exploited. Paycheck well earned. Almaty celebrated the World Press Freedom Day with a cartoon exhibition. Over 70 works from across the CIA were presented as a collection titled Freedom of Speech Without Words. The caricature exhibit has become a tradition by now. For 6 years straight, the International Foundation Adil Söz together with journalist unions select the best cartoons. This time, Nikolai Veryochkin and Igor Kishkov received cash bonuses and letters of credit. Their cartoons will be published by leading newspapers. Meanwhile, Tamara Kaleva, the head at the Freedom of Speech Foundation, noted that cartoons criticizing the mass media situation is a small step towards improving the overall situation in the country. Kazakhstan may improve its mass media positions dramatically if mass media laws are tailored to democratic principles. The law on mass media needs to be changed. All those complicated registration procedures need to be eradicated. Like the ex-KGB old ways of handling the situation, they can always find a reason to shut the publication down or force its re-registration. More suspicious activity has been noticed during the trial of Vadim Kuramshin in Taraz. Reporters covering the process were able to film Mukhtar Udurbayev, the case victim, taking an unidentified document from the state prosecutor Akhmetov right before the hearing. The day before, Kuramshin's attorneys asked for the disqualification of the presiding judge and case prosecutor. The makers of the video claim that the person sitting on the right is Mukhtar Udurbayev, who during several minutes gets acquainted with the document which was given to him by the prosecution representative Akhmetov. Interestingly, the victim in the case, Udurbayev, the Korday district prosecutor's assistant, is subordinate of the state prosecutor Akhmetov, who is the head of the Jambul Regional Prosecutor's Office. It is impossible to establish what exactly the document was about from the footage. To recap, human rights activist Vadim Kuramshin was detained in the Korday village of Jambul region region on January 23rd. He was charged with extorting a bribe from the prosecutor's office staff member, which may lead up to 15 years of imprisonment. The head of the Committee on Protection of Corruption, Zhana Baitelova, claims the trial against the activist is nothing but a political order. In this case, Vadim Kuramshin is charged with extortion and we intend to prove otherwise. Kuramshin is filing a separate claim on instigating a criminal case on the damage caused by the current case. We have inquired all the materials already. By adopting new residence registration rules, the authorities have created an entire army of lawbreakers, say public activists, adding that the total migration control will only create more tension in the society. The consolidated and consistent, but at the same time subconscious and unspecific inner protest of the population's majority may transfer from their formation centers to all the provinces as wave of discontent towards the authorities. In other words, the authorities may provoke such latent protest moods based on such norms. Gaziza Timakova noted that there are approximately 700,000 people who have no housing in Kazakhstan. Only 50,000 of them are entitled to own apartments by 2020 through the affordable housing program. The rest will find themselves in uncertain situation. Moreover, says the expert, the authorities have created a solid base for corruption by putting district police stations in charge of identifying citizens living without residency registrations. Meanwhile, the lower chamber of the parliament is reviewing another bill on personal data. According to the new legislation, all Kazakhstan citizens must go through a fingerprint procedure. Furthermore, the law will require citizens to share all kinds of information, including the blood type and iris print. Though experts claim the bill contradicts the constitution, the MPs consider it important. Among other things, personal data is required if you are taken to a hospital. I don't want everyone to have access to that, or let's say I have a criminal record. This is a very personal information and only respective state bodies may access it. A Karaganda resident has assaulted a local policeman for his request not to throw sunflower seed shells on the sidewalk. Previously, President Nazarbayev instructed law enforcement to step up their efforts in suppressing minor offences, including littering, which prompted policemen to fine and even arrest violators. Karaganda police officer demonstrates his barely hanging shoulder straps. The street hooligan physically attacked the district police officer for receiving a comment on littering the street with sunflower seed shells. The drunken man punched the officer in the face and tried to tear off his shoulder straps. The police unit at the scene has managed to detain the man. The criminal case was initiated on the charges of assaulting a police officer. An administrative protocol was drawn up for public disturbance and the hooligan was taken to a temporary detention facility. At first I didn't realize what I have done, but now I regret it. Clearly I'm in trouble now. This is all we have time for now. Join us tomorrow for more. Thank you for watching and goodbye.